All right, we're being recorded. So I'll save this out and then I'll share the link to it for later use for our still life editing demo. So going into Bridge, so these are some photos I took for a client a couple of years ago where she does handmade designer handbags and jewelry and bracelets and then sells them. So we wanted to basically shoot them in a variety of ways, but this works, very well for still life. So I was going to edit this photo, and as you can tell here, my background, isn't super clean. We had issues with the setup, so I'm going to show you basically how to make this pure white, and this will go away, how to use it to clean up our products so they look really nice in our still life. And then I was going to edit this photo where we had multiple products, basically how to bring out so we can see our products nice and well, how to do adjustive brightness for, bringing out bags that maybe are a little darker, just so I can kind of see how we can get our objects to stand out in our still lifes really well. So I'm just going to make a quick copy. So that way if I mess up, I can always throw it to the trash, go back to the original and make a new copy and start over. So I'm going to open this into Photoshop because it is very similar to Photo P. All the tools are in the same spot. All the image adjustments are in the same spot. Layers are on the right-hand side. So very, very similar. So I'm going to use the crop tool. And I would consider, depending on how you shoot your still life, cropping it so it is, in the correct composition and the correct placement of the objects. This one is a little slanted, so I'm going to use my strain tool, and I'm just going to basically correct the angle of this bag a little bit. So it's going to rotate it. And then I'm just going to basically, even out my spacing so that way each side is evenly spaced, and also top to bottom. How you, crop it is up to you. So basically I want to make sure I have the same kind of buffer on each side of this jewelry and this, bracelet over here. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to double click. So as you can see, I got stuff going on in the background. If I zoom in, pressing Control or Command plus, I got some smudges here. And now I got some pieces of dust. I got stuff on the product I want to get rid of. So what I would do first is make sure your objects are nice and clean. So I'm just going to go to Layer, Duplicate Layer. This is the same in Photo P, the same layer, duplicate layer as well. And then I'm going to use our spot healing tools. So we got spot healing and the healing brush. So I'll do the spot healing basically for like little pieces that are away from edges. It usually does a good job guessing if it's like away from an edge and removing something for you. So I'm just going to make sure my products look nice and clean, get rid of any spots that are kind of away from edges or lines. Sometimes it'll guess right or wrong. So I'm just trying to, once you kind of use it, the more you kind of understand, like, okay, usually guess is right on these type of things when I remove them, but other times it will guess wrong. And so if I tried it, I'm just going to zoom in on this fingerprint. So I'm just going to make it bigger, right? It's got a whole bunch of complicated stuff. So if I try to click on that, it's going to do a weird, funky guess, right? So I'm just going to click back in my history. So back a step or press Command Z to undo. So I could try the standard healing brush tool. So this is where, again, I control where it heals from. So I hold Alt or Option and press click. And then my next normal click will basically heal from that area. So if I Alt Option click on the clean area and I start trying to hit it, it's kind of doing an okay job. But as you can see, once it gets near edges, it starts having a problem just because it's trying to remove what's inside the area you're painting, but it's not quite sure because of the edges it's near. So then I would go into the clone stamp tool. And for this, you could work at a higher flow. Depends on how fast you want it to clone or if you want it to blend more. I want this to blend because it's kind of on a curve. And so if I had a super hard edge, I'll just show you real quick, it's going to look too blocky. So if I, again, Alt click, and then I clone it. Oh, sorry, I'll go 100% just as you can see it. And I clone here, right? Super hard edge. So I kind of want to blend it more, so I'm going to use a softer edge on my clone stamp. I'm just going to go back those two. I'm just going to bring the flow down to about 50%, so that way I can kind of, slowly do it, and slowly get rid of it. So basically I'm just alt-clicking on the clean area, and then clicking into the smudge. Let's go here. Actually going to zoom in a little bit more. So again, to zoom in and out is Control or Command plus, and to zoom out is Control or Command minus. So if you're on a PC, it's Control plus. If you're on a Mac, it's Command plus. So basically, I'm just cleaning over the clean parts, right, from over the thumbprint. That's looking better. So once I have it nice and clean, I'm just going to flatten my layer. So layer, flatten image. Same as Photopea. Go to layer, down to the bottom where it says flatten image. And it's basically going to combine your layers together. Next, I'm going to, I want to basically make my white background pure white and hopefully get rid of some of this issues with the background. So you can go to image adjustments, selective color, and do it in here, but I prefer to work in an adjustment layers because it gives me a layer mask. So I'm going to go down to the bottom right where this little half and half circle, same as in Photopea, and then go to selective color. So what selective color can let you do, it starts off on reds, but I'm just going to click the colors and then change it to whites, is I can actually change colors of a specific color. So if I wanted to, add red or cyan to a color, right, I could do that to just that one color, which is white right now. So what I want to do is increase the white. So where it says black, if I drag it to the right, it's going to darken the whites. If I drag it to the left, it's going to lighten the whites. Make sure it's set to absolute. That's the strongest version. Relative isn't as strong. Absolute's stronger. And so as you can see here, if I turn it off, and I'm going to zoom in on, you can see it's actually adding some highlights to the white reflections on the products. So I don't want those because I like how the product looks. So what I'm going to do, because I have a layer mask, I want it white around my product, but not on those white highlights. So I'm just going to get a paintbrush, switch it to black. I'm going to bring my flow up to 100%. You can change the hardness of the edge depending on what you're trying to paint off. And so I'm just going to paint black on those highlights where I don't want it to actually, increase I just want it to go on the background. So I'm just going to paint back. And if you have a hard time seeing, just turn the little layer eye on enough and kind of see where it's going. So I'm just going to paint off this and the keychain. Okay. So you can kind of see in my layer mask where I painted. So if I want to double the strength of this, all I need to do is go layer, duplicate layer, hit OK, and it'll double the strength. So from here to here, right? It makes it a lot even pure bright. So almost got rid of all the issues. I mean, you can see before I had this like wrinkle, on the sheet here. And so now I effectively taking it out just by making this pure white. Almost got rid of this one. So what I'm going to do is flatten my layers again. So layer, flatten image. And then I'm just going to work on a new layer. So layer, duplicate layer. Hit OK. And then I could try the spot healing brush tool and see how well it does on this line crease here. So I'm just going to basically paint across the shape of the line. So it looks pretty good. So kind of got some stuff here left over from the crease. I'm just going to paint across that. So if it didn't do a good job, I would just clone it, right? I would basically just clone, select the clean white and then just basically clone over and paint it off. So that's looking good. So nice and clean background. So the same for black. If I had a black background, I could do a selective color, go into my neutrals or blacks. And then basically if I had a black background, I could drag the black down so it's super dark and basically, take out anything and then just paint back the areas where it brought down on my subject. So as always, make sure you go layer, flatten image. So it combines your layers so you don't have any layers. and then save it. So I already made a copy, so I'm just gonna hit OK. So I'm just gonna show the before and after real quick. So again, this is before and after. So straightened it, cropped it, centered, and then remove spots and imperfections, did some clone stamp, and then basically got rid of the whites or increased the white on the background, so it cleaned my background. For this shot, again, I'm going to make a copy, so duplicate. You could do adjustments in Camera Raw if you have it. There's the same features too in Photoshop Mix, or sorry, excuse me, Photoshop Express. Where you can adjust the color temperature. So it is kind of a little dark, so I'm just going to bring my exposure up a little bit. I'm actually going to bring up my shadows up a bit. So this is an older photo, that's why it's saying fill light here, but it would normally say shadows. Just so I can see my products pretty evenly. I am going to correct some of the yellow tint from the lights and add a little bit of magenta because they had kind of a green cast. So you could do some color temperature corrections. I'm going to add some clarity just to kind of make the products look nice and stand out. Vibrance, maybe a little bit just to get the colors up a little bit. So once you have it overall how you want it, you're going to open it into Photoshop. And again, if you want to do exposure adjustments in Photoshop, just go to Image, Adjustments. You could do Brightness, Contrast. You could do levels where you can adjust the exposure. These are all exposure ones. If you want to add colors, you can balance the colors too. So if I needed to correct, the colors in my midtones and add like blue and magenta to correct the color tone, you could do that. I'm just going to cancel. So there are image adjustments just like Camera Raw in these adjustment section. That's your curves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, make a new layer. And I'm going to make sure my product is pretty clean. So when we set this up, you can tell there's like 10 different products on this mannequin. It is pretty clean because we spent a long time going through and cleaning everything before we placed it. We do have some kind of like product imperfections, so I'm going to kind of help those out, clean those up. On these leather bags, like this one has a good scratch on it, so I'm just using that spot healing brush tool. So I'm actually going to try to remove this dude, the little stand hole there. So I'm going to try the spot healing. I'm just going to cover the shape. It did a pretty good job. I'm just going to kind of even this out with the little clone stamp. So Alt click and then kind of blend it over. That's looking better. So then what I want to do is basically lighten specific areas on my product. So what I'm going to do is add an adjustment layer with the levels. So I'm just going to click here on the bottom right, and I'm going to go, so it's little half and half circles, same as Photo P. I'm going to go to levels. And what levels lets you do is it lets you control your highlights, your midtones, and your shadows independently. And so what I want to do is I want to lighten up these products that are kind of darker in the lower half. So I'm going to drag up my highlights a bit. I'm going to bring up my midtones a bit. There we go. And then I don't want it to do to the whole photo. As you can see, it's like blowing out the upper part. So I'm going to invert my layer mask. So I'm going to press Control-I on a PC or Command-I on a Mac. I'm going to get my brush and set it to white. So I'm switching it from black to white. I'm going to bring my flow down to like, a smaller percentage just because I want it to blend more and I want to slowly kind of bring it in. So I'm going to use a soft brush, no hardness on the edge. And so then I'm just going to paint with white just on the products that I want to kind of bring up. So I'm just going to paint on these handbags. I'm going to paint on this lower belt area, some of the mannequin, just so it looks a little more even. Because this is an adjustment layer, I can keep adjusting it. So I'm just going to bring these up a little bit more. There we go. So this is before and after. So you can see how I'm bringing out those specific objects in my still life. Once I'm done, I cleaned it up. The crop looks good. I'm just going to flatten my image. So layer again, oops, layer flatten image at the bottom. same as photo P, and then save it out. It's already a copy, so I'm just going to save and replace it as a JPEG. Hit OK. So then if I go back to Bridge, this is my before, and this is my after. So again, I adjusted the exposure, I corrected the color temperature, added a little clarity and some vibrance to get those, products to look good. Open it in Photoshop, and then I, healed up some spots on the bags, got rid of the little holder on the bottom, and then I lightened up certain products, for my still life to get them to stand out. So cool. All right, so I'm gonna stop my recording. Come on, dude. There we go. And then I'm gonna save